Hello, everybody. Welcome to Triday's The Journey Conversations with publisher Kris Millegan. I am your host, A.W. Finnegan. With us today is Mark Harris, author of an amazing book, Houses of the Holy, A Nightmare Web of Hate, Crime, and Child Abuse, available at Triday.com in the usual sellers. This is an unprecedented story of one man's survival in his struggle against the power of the federal government, state government, the extreme right, the religious right, the mob, and the cult of Freemasonry. It is extremely well documented and focuses on unholy alliances and the stranglehold religion and money have on politics and law enforcement. It exposes a legacy of hate and corruption in the religious right and Freemasonry. The colorful cast of often cartoonish characters is compelling and will shock and entertain the reader. It includes a federal convict engaged in a life of crime, while local, state, and federal authorities run around in circles cleaning up after him. George W. Bush's former attorney, the son of a mobster who's a known associate of Santo Trafficante Jr., the son of the racist doctor who chose the first astronauts. Former Governor Rick Scott, the U.S. Acting Assistant Attorney General and future Acting Attorney General, and a parade of religious leaders willing to commit crimes to protect a monster, and many others. Mark Harris is currently an instructor of corporate pilots around the world for a large corporation. He is also an FAA examiner granted the privilege to issue licenses and type ratings and teaches several safety-related specialty courses. He has a bachelor's degree in physics from the University of North Georgia, where he graduated magna cum laude as the top physics graduate, and a master's degree in aeronautical engineering technology from Arizona State University, where he calibrated the university's wind tunnel. He's a decorated former Air Force Special Operations pilot who served in a combat zone. And now, Kris Millegan.
Wow, Adam, thanks very much. And, we really appreciate Adam stepping up here. This is, Lord have mercy, 100 and something journey we've been doing here. And we really appreciate you stepping up, Adam. Now,
Yep.
Mark, Lord have mercy. You know, so how'd you get yourself in this mess anyway? And why did you want to do something about it?
How I got into the mess, well, I guess, depends on how far you want to go back, but, I married into something without knowing what I was marrying into. Uh, Really, how I got into it was just trying to protect my kids. And that's why I wanted to do something about it. It's because my kids were victims. They witnessed other children be victimized. I discovered a pattern. I discovered other related cases. Some of those are foster kids who are missing, some who disappeared in the middle of the night. I believe it was in 2001, leaving a house full of child pornography and computer and camera equipment behind. I have concerns with what happened to those kids, whether they're even still with the living. Um, and So I want justice, and I don't even know what justice looks like anymore because you've seen the mushroom cloud of this that expanded from to California, to Washington, D.C., to the Office of Attorney General, even some people speaking for the White House, top Justice Department officials, lying, spending, stonewalling, deflecting. And I mean, the idea that these people are going to be somehow held accountable and go to prison or be disbarred or whatever, I'd be foolish to believe that, but at least maybe I can hold them publicly accountable. So.
Yes, indeed. And well, I've been chasing some of this corruption for quite some time. I mean, I started this because my daddy was a spook and he told me some things I didn't understand many years ago. And I mean, it took me 20 years, to understand what he told me because there really wasn't. He started telling me that, the intelligence agencies were running drugs and different things. And, so I started looking into a subject I called CIA drugs. Okay. And then I found out in CIA drugs, you had kind of two lanes, you might say. You had one where, they're importing narcotics and stuff like that. Um, and then one called the dark side, okay, where they were using technology. Really, it's a technology that generally started in Europe and then got brought over here through the military, and then it was in academy for a while. And because where this was happening, Mark, you were in Niceville, Florida, up there in the Panhandle, okay? And one thing that came out of the Panhandle was there was this group called the Finders, okay, that got they were in around Tallahassee, and it led back to again a group of people using the occult and then using foster children, okay, for some nefarious reasons. Okay, one of them, could be to create honey traps, okay, where you blackmail, okay, politicians and other power brokers because you want them, to do a particular uh, thing, okay, and you can't get them to do it through just normal politicking, okay. So, once I heard your story, I says, well, it seems that, it's a continuation of this particular corruption, which is, well, Lord have mercy, rather insidious because, I mean, they're corrupting children, okay, and using children for political purposes. And, it's just beyond the pale. And, we did the book Franklin Scandal, which uh, was had that involved with it, where they were corrupting children to be used for honey traps. And then the stuff that happened to you and that you document in your book is just beyond the pale. And I mean, what did you think when it started?
Well, I didn't know what hit me, because first I thought it was a church cover up, you know. Then, local and state officials got involved. When it finally rose to the point of the feds lying to me, the FBI, the ATF lying to me, and that's the point I realized, something was terribly wrong here. I was being hung out to dry, and there was a federal cover up. But it took a while before I got to that point because it was a series of escalations. It started out with child on child sexual abuse that was a symptom of adult on child sexual abuse. The investigations got shut down. I was forced to file a restraining order. That got repeatedly violated. That revealed the existence of this arsenal of weapons in the hands of a felon. It led to the kidnapping of my kids, and it just kept escalating and escalating and escalating until it got all the way to Mr. Eric Holder himself. So,
right. Well, you ended up. I mean, you were a pilot, okay,
mm-hmm.
and were working flying planes, and this whole rigmarole affected your ability to fly planes. And yeah. I mean, they brought the corruption into the mechanisms that license pilots.
Right. Yeah.
And now you just recently found out that one of these people that was involved in those machinations was having problems with his foster children, or what?
The primary focal point.
Explain how they went to take away your license.
Well, okay. Keep in mind, this was after 8 or so plots to frame me in Florida that failed, and various malicious efforts to try to wrestle my kids away from me and put them in the hands of their abuser by state officials and local officials. They came up with a backup plan and went after my career. My nemesis in the story, the antagonist, you want to call it, Mr. Mike Nobles, who was at the time holed up hiding in Guyana, South America, emailed my employer with this long laundry list of false allegations. And so this HR representative forces me to go get an evaluation with who he claims was the company doctor. I found out later that the company didn't have a doctor. This was a hand-picked doctor who happened to have a bunch of Masonic stuff on his walls. I found him on a list of officers at the Roswell Masonic Lodge later, and John Birch Society right-wing literature all over his lobby. So I had to go to this guy for an evaluation and subject me to a urinalysis, a drug and alcohol test, which is completely illegal under FAA rules because there was no reasonable suspicion. To do that, they would have had to see me appear and smell of alcohol, appear under the influence at work to justify that. They sent me for this evaluation 2 months after they got an email from a federal convict holed up in South America. So anyway, so obviously there was no reasonable suspicion, but I passed it, of course. In fact, I had taken a break from drinking just for personal reasons, nothing to do with any addiction problems. And I hadn't even drank in 2 years at the time. So then this doctor makes me go see a psychiatrist for an evaluation, which there was no justification for either. And this psychiatrist happens to, he's on social media with racist comments about Barack Obama, pro-CIA torture, Islamophobia. He made commentary in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution opposing Obamacare and another extreme right-winger. So I had my evaluation from him, fly back home to Florida the next day. I'm locked in a holding cell for 6 days, held without bond, pending a psychological evaluation. I'd already had 2 at that point. Ended up with 5, including a full battery of testing by a woman who's well known in Washington, D.C. for her credentials, and I passed all of them with flying colors, and all the substance abuse evaluations, and ended up with then this woman in Oklahoma City from this fundamentalist Freemason family plans to fake DUI on my record. So a woman who, I don't want to be mean, but I believe suffers religious delusions because she thinks she's seen angels. Okay, that's in her own words. She plans to fake DUI on my records. And so I get a letter in the mail saying my application from the previous January for a medical certificate had been denied because it disclosed alcohol abuse. Well, it didn't disclose anything because there was nothing to disclose. I still got a copy of the application, and the application legally didn't even exist anymore because it had been 60 days and it had already been approved. So it was all smoke and mirrors. Completely bypassed all the laws, rules, and regulations. Everything after that was CYA. They dredged up this old sealed arrest from 1998 and a military board of inquiry that resulted from it to cover their tracks with dirty laundry. But keep in mind, that was all already after the fact. That was after they had nullified my medical certificate through fraud. And speaking of which, this HR representative, it turns out, he's been raping his foster kids. At least that's what he's been charged with. Another guy from a right-wing evangelical or fundamentalist family, all of his relatives it's Jesus, 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 Trump, Trump, Trump on their Facebook feeds. He's got a relative who's a corrections officer. His father-in-law was a police chief and a Shriner and a big shot in the Freemasons. He had an aunt who was a member of the Order of the Eastern Star. His father was a military veteran. 2 relatives who founded ministries, and found one record that says he was a pre-theology major in college. So another creep hiding behind religion, raping foster kids, just like Mike Nobles, my nemesis in the book.
Right.
Nobles foster kids, the state of Florida has stated twice in writing, never existed. No record, they say, but that's a whole other story of his whole life of crime being erased. So,
No, I mean the corruption that you ran up into was quite the buzzsaw. And now, one thing we want to say here too. I mean, not all Masons, not all John
no, no,
Birchers, not all evangelicals or Christians are into this
absolutely not. I
corruption.
agree. I agree.
Okay. But people that are doing corruption often use um, these organizations to facilitate their corruption and their cover up and their ability to operate. Okay. Because again, with Masons, if somebody, a quote unquote brother, asks you to do something, you're supposed to do it, even if it's suborning, perjury or breaking the law. You're supposed to do that. So organizations like that lead themselves to having corruption. Now, somebody could just say, you're just a disgruntled guy, and it's all about divorce, and it's just a custody battle. What do you have? And then also there's people that have think that you were just so naive, and you should have just walked away the first time that you felt that there was any corruption going on. And what do you say to those people that say that?
Well, in terms of the custody battle, that I put that up there with the list of I call them Goebbels lies. You have Joseph
Yeah.
Goebbels, the propaganda. You repeat it often enough. Mike Nobles, Mike's father-in-law, his family, his church, these state child protection investigators, this Niceville police officer, desperately, and some religious leaders at churches I was going to, tried to bully, harass, intimidate, bait me into getting into a divorce and custody battle. Meanwhile, the same time they were trying to discredit the children by claiming there was a divorce and custody battle going on that didn't exist. So they were fanning the flames. And the problem is the actual records. I have the actual records. I have overwhelming proof of crimes committed by public officials, falsifying reports. And the big one is obstruction of justice. If somebody's accused of a crime and you give that person an alibi, you're obstructing justice. You lie and give them an alibi. FBI agent Timothy Kennard did that. He lied to give Mike Nobles an alibi, and he's an FBI agent. Remember the email about the little rat hole in his bathroom that he was crawling to his attic. He claimed he called up this woman who verified Mike Noble's story. Well, the woman's never spoke to anybody at the FBI before. He made that up. They also, both the ATF and FBI claim, there's a gray area in the law. He can have machine guns. It's okay. Well, there's no gray area in the law. I'm not a fool. I can do my legal research. I ran a background check. I paid for a background check service to confirm that this HR guy, who went on to be a big shot at Delta Airlines, by the way, that's where he was working when this happened, was the same guy, and it was him. But since I signed up for the service, I ran one on me. I have a sealed court case from 1998 that has been released to the public by the state of Florida in retaliation against me. Okay, that's a crime. Ran a background check on Mike Nobles, who's a federal convict, was plotting against the government in 1986. No record of anything in his background check. Now, you can't seal a federal conviction, but it's not showing up on the background check. So
now, do you worry about your safety, and do you worry about standing up and talking about this corruption, and naming names and saying, hey, you guys did this to me? I mean, what are you looking to have happen by publishing your book?
Well, of course, I want accountability, but I also want to expose their tactics, so in hopes that it can prevent this from happening to other people. And I'm sure it's happened to other people. This method they used to deprive me of my medical certification was devised by Dr. Michael Berry, former NASA doctor who went on to become the top doctor at the FAA. His father chose the Apollo astronauts, who were all Freemasons, by the way, as you know. But anyway, it's called the Berry Scheme. It was featured in the Washington Times. It's also in the San Francisco Chronicle. It's a criminal scheme. It's racketeering is what it is, and it's fraud. And he's been in the national press for it, but nobody did anything about it. But I know from reaching out to other people, there have been a number of victims of Dr. Berry and that scheme who were whistleblowers who lost their careers because that was the way of shutting them down, was stripping them of their medical by making stuff up.
Wow. So
In my case, they made up a fake DUI, and then when they got caught in that, they backpedaled and then made up a fake medical history of alcoholism, claiming I'd received some kind of treatment in the military, which never happened. There's no record to support. So,
and why would they do this?
to control me, to discredit and control me,
to make you do what?
Well, I mean, they held the puppet strings, of my career. First of all, they've been trying to discredit me as crazy, and that failed through all these evaluations. So, label him the disgruntled alcoholic. Well, that's the next best thing, I guess. Plus, they had total control over my career.
And all of this was initiated right after Mike Nobles emailed them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they admitted that was why, even though Tenora Frett of the U.S. Department of Labor turned around and claimed later to cover Mike Noble's tracks that it was a passenger. Well, there's no record of any passenger ever making a complaint. The company's gone on the record in writing that no passenger ever made a complaint against me. Nobody but Mike Nobles ever made a complaint against me. I had an excellent reputation with my peers and with the management of the company and everything. Was well liked, well respected. And until they engaged in the CYA and smear campaign, and I ended up losing most of my friends there and everything else.
Right. And well, you were trying to work things through with some of the local churches and the local people there, and you were talking to them. And I find it so interesting. A lawyer came up to you one time and said, "Hey, you're dealing with a cult, okay?" And then another time, somebody drives by you in a parking lot and rolls down the window and says, "Hey, get out of here! You're dealing with a cult, okay?" And when you look at what happened to you, I mean, it's quite obvious that this quote unquote cult had the place wired, for their own aggrandizement, or however you want to say it. I mean, they controlled, the strings in that community.
Yeah. Well,
I was amazed. Yeah, I was amazed at that. It's just how much they were able to control through so many of these people, just everybody covering up for the next guy and just all protecting Mike Nobles. And it was just wild.
Just the number of people who got their hands dirty for this one man is just staggering. Again, it ended up going all the way to Washington, D.C. So, obviously he had dirt on people. Was he an informant? I had one creep at church who was trying to manipulate me and play manipulative games, even gave me a cell phone that I think was tampered with. And he kept trying to convince me that Mike Nobles was a government informant. Certainly a lot of indications he was. I know he acted as an informant in 1986 in a case. Maybe he'd been an informant ever since. I don't know. But again, like I've told Kris, this quit being about him a long time ago. There are a lot of Mike Nobles out there. This is about the system that didn't protect my kids and other kids, that has been willing to engage in flagrant corruption at every level.
let's talk about your kids. Okay. I mean, what did they start talking to you about? And then what did you do? And then what happened to you? And how are your kids today?
Well, first they started talking about the guns and the gun room. He had a rat hole, going down to a series of bunkers on his property. He had a drug lab there. Gabe called it Pawpaw's Science Lab. He didn't know what a drug lab was, but what he drew pictures of, my son Gabe, he's autistic and artistic, photographic memory, uncanny photographic memory, very gifted artist. And so even when he was 7 years old, he was able to draw these things. And it's just the way he thinks. He didn't just draw pictures of his drug lab. He numbered the steps in the manufacturing process of the drug. Mix this, heat this, cool this. He had it down pat. This arsenal of guns, gas masks, machine guns, grenades, all this stuff associated with the extreme right that Nobles had been involved with, was convicted of being involved with back in the 80s. So he never stopped. All this stuff was very consistent with each other and with his past, and as an ATF agent told me, consistent with his FBI file. And then eventually they told me about witnessing murder.
Your kids witnessed murders.
Yeah. So I tried to report the guns. They refused to take a report. They tried to frame me for false reporting again. The same thing happened when I tried to report the murder. I was threatened. They threatened this crooked cop, Joey Forgione, who was running around cleaning up after Nobles. Threatened to go after my job, threatened to sue me, threatened to arrest me if I filled out an affidavit. And then Nobles ended up skipping the country, and I decided to go ahead and report it anyway. And so nothing happened, no investigation. I sent certified letters to the Okaloosa County Sheriff because this murder that my kids said they witnessed, and there's zero doubt in my mind that it occurred, was in Okaloosa County. To the Niceville Police Chief because it was in the city of Niceville, and to the Walton County Sheriff's Department because the place they identified where the body was disposed of was in Walton County. They all refused to interview my kids.
And didn't he describe a police officer helping?
Yeah, when they ended up arresting me when we found the site, they hit the panic button and threw me in jail, and forced my kids to testify. And that's one of the things. Gabe dropped a bombshell. He said that there was a guy there. He said, how bad guys sometimes dress up like a police officer. Well, he wasn't dressed up like a police officer. You can be sure he was a police officer. I think I know who it was, but.
Yeah, described him too, and how moving that body.
Yeah, I mean, kids, they don't make that kind. I mean, he said it smelled like 10,000 rotten squid. He described the decomposed state of the body, what the sunken in eyes creeped him out, the insects. I mean, every detail. His grandfather, cleaning his car out, pressure washing this utility trailer, deodorizing his car, going and washing his clothes, the grandmother scrubbing the carpet, the blood out of the carpet, and then eventually removing the carpet from the house, which the carpet was removed because I was there shortly after that and witnessed it. So, there's no way that they just made up all those details. Not to mention the fact that this tree in the woods where they say, they witnessed this lynching of a corpse was there. We found it. It was exactly as Gabe described it in advance, every detail. So.
Yeah. And one of the things that really shocked me was just how they were able to control the court process. And, you had like therapists testifying saying, yes, there was abuse. Yes, there was abuse. And the judge just like, case closed, dismissed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in that last case, you had two therapists testifying, and I submitted transcripts from two other therapists who had previously testified, their psychological evaluations, diagnosing them with PTSD. The judge even had a death threat in writing in his hand, and he would not grant me a restraining order. So,
Wow. Wow. So how did you
what
survive all this? What was it in you that enabled you to fight this evil, we might say?
my kids.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it.
your kids.
The soccer jersey. They never got to play soccer again. This little trophy. Um, they were too shell shocked. I tried to get them to go back. They just ran, cried, screamed. Karate was the same way. Their lives were altered forever. But yeah, I couldn't quit as much as I may have felt like it and been overwhelmed because I had to keep fighting for them. So,
And how are they today?
considering good, years and years of therapy, probably I think maybe 5 combined involuntary hospitalizations, uh, uh, different medications. They're both off medication. Gabe only sees a psychiatrist every 6 months now. Toby went through a real bad rebellious phase, stealing, vandalizing, and booze and drugs and everything else. But he's straightened up and been working hard. Hadn't missed a day at work. He's been working for about 6 months now. I have to drop it out of school. I got him to go back and finish. So it's been a slog. But Gabe's working part time. He's 3 times Social Security Administration has reviewed his case and 3 times approved him for disability for PTSD caused by crimes that the government has covered up. Along those lines, the Florida Attorney General's office reviewed their records and deemed them crime victims and approved them for crime victims compensation. They received treatment through Lutheran Services through a crime victims program that's funded by crime victims compensation. An army of mental health professionals, multiple treatment programs, evaluations, everybody 100% consistent, severe trauma, and they're all consistent about where it came from. So,
Right. Well, they were awfully lucky to have you as their father, you know. Adam, any other comments or things you want to say here?
Yeah, I mean, so if anybody, for all the viewers, I read this book, like I just finished it last night, and I was just amazed. I was shocked that things could be that controlled. And I was just, wow, he made it through so much. I mean, just years and years of them targeting him, trying to destroy him. And he just kept getting up and kept trying to fight for what was right. And it was, he an honorable thing, and he's a warrior for what he did. And his kids too are getting to where they are and just surviving all that. It's just wow.
well, the
Amen.
last time they knocked me down, I was down for years, but I finally got back up and hooked up with Kris. And um,
Yeah, this was an
one thing I don't
amazing
want
book.
to completely overlook here. I was hesitant to even put this in the book because I don't know, people are going to try to discredit it because of this, but the fact is, it's a reality. It's a reality. This man at this Knight Templar place, they had all these Knight Templar name corporations. The houses numbered the year Knight Templar were founded. All this Knight Templar nonsense, which to me is white supremacist, Ku Klux Klan type nonsense. We're not talking the Illuminati here. I don't think we're talking. If you look at his background, his backwoods, Alabama, Ku Klux Klan, Posse Comitatus, Patriot Network, the Order, all those groups overlap. But anyway, in the middle of all this man has this trophy. He has this pair of guns, a rifle and a pistol, in this case, in this glass case with pictures of, with newspaper articles of the Kennedy assassination. He tells my son that this is a hero's gun and it's a gun that kills the president. Now, there's no way I can even prove that gun existed. It's just my son's account. But I know my son was telling the truth. He's drawn a picture of it with, with his photographic memory. So the question is it plausible? Well, I hope we did a good job in the book. I tried to tie these tentacles together, but you've got multiple anti-Castro Cubans. You've got multiple tentacles reaching into the CIA. You've got the son of a known associate of Santo Trafficante Jr. and a whole bunch of other mob ties. You've got George Bush's attorney sticking his nose in a case of domestic violence. There's a lot of reasons to believe that trophy was real, and that may have been a motive or the motive of the federal cover-up. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that was amazing. And you included a picture in the book. I saw that. That
Yes,
was really something.
So.
Yeah.
But again, you've got all these tentacles to the CIA, to the extreme right, John Birch Society. Now, I'm a firm believer in Dr. Jeffrey Caulfield and General Walker that the extreme right and the mob were behind the Kennedy assassination. Probably the CIA too, I don't know, but are elements within the CIA. But anyway, you had all these forces sort of intersecting with this man and that house. So,
well, it's a story beyond belief.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that totally.
That happened to you, and I mean, you don't just tell the story, you give a whole bunch of documentation, and you have a whole bunch more, and getting this story to print. I mean, you started, working on it yourself. You tried to get some ghostwriters. The first one you hired, they quit at the start. You talked with people in Hollywood. They thought it had some merit.
She just quit. She said her brakes went out and she had a concussion, and then she vanished. So, take that for what you will. So
Right. And then when I got involved, you had a gentleman that you had hired, and
yeah.
I concurred, and we went with him, and then he soon passed away in a motorcycle wreck. So, the book is called Houses of the Holy. Okay, a nightmare of web of hate, crime, corruption, and child abuse, and it's beyond the pale. And
Well, just so people know, it's not just me. Their school principal at the Christian school they went to said she never seen anything like this. She never seen a case where she made a report to the abuse hotline and nobody responded. The attorney that I had, the attorney you referenced, who said I was dealing with a cult, that my life was in danger. She never seen a case where somebody flagrantly violated a restraining order over and over again, and the judge wouldn't do anything about it. Of course, the judge ended up giving him his guns back as a felon too. The medical doctor made 2 reports, never seen anything like it. Nobody responded. The therapist who made 2 reports, same thing. Court reporter in that case, that sideshow with Judge Gary Bergosh, said she never seen anything like that court proceeding before. The director of the Santa Rosa County Kids House, it's a child advocacy center, that she'd never seen a case like this before. The Mike Johns, the director of the Mustard Seed Counseling, who I was going to in Georgia for this program they put me into, had never seen a case where somebody had been put into a program who never had a DUI, never had any diagnosis of alcoholism. He said, I was in an aftercare program, but I never received care or a diagnosis.
And you had to go to AA meetings and stuff too, right?
Hundreds, yes.
yeah. Well, we can only we got to think about our listeners. Everybody's got things to do, and but we need to put this out there. We need to put this truth out there. We need, people need to understand what has happened when some people have stood up to this quote unquote cult. And we should be careful when we're dealing with cults out there. So onwards to a better future for our children.
Onwards.
Well, in a 2-year period I just read last night, 2018 to 20, 71,000 foster kids went missing, and 51,000 those weren't even reported.
Amen. Home shy.